Hi, everybody. So we are here to talk our latest Harry Potter podcast. This is our 7th that we're doing. We're talking about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. And I'm here with Abby, Jeremy, and Richard. And if you guys just want to say hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
All right, great. This one should be really interesting. I have the chat room open if you want to add your comments and join with us in talking about this film. It should be a lot of fun. I'll try to keep track of it while we're talking. So yeah, I have a small summary this time. And as I always do at the beginning of these podcasts, I give a little summary of the movie, and then we share. This is a spoiler-filled podcast, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, and then watch the podcast. So here we go. In this film, we start off with Snape arriving at the Malfoys for a dinner with Voldemort and the other Death Eaters. Voldemort takes Lucius's wand so he can use it to kill Harry. Meanwhile, the Dursleys leave and Hermione wipes her parents' memories of her. The Order of the Phoenix gathers to escort Harry, disguising themselves as Harry. Unfortunately, they're ambushed by Death Eaters, killing Mad-Eye Moody, Hedwig, and injuring George Weasley and Hagrid. Harry has a vision of Ollivander being tortured by Voldemort. Ollivander tells Voldemort that he needs to use another wand in order to kill Harry. Next, Bill Weasley and Fleur Delacour have a wedding, which is interrupted by the Ministry of Magic. Harry, Ron, and Hermione escape and find out Umbridge has the locket. They successfully steal it from her, but are unable to destroy it. Next, the three camp out and have realizations about Horcruxes. They learn that Dumbledore has an Elder Wand. Ron then gets jealous of Harry and Hermione. After seeing a vision of them together, he leaves. After seeing a vision of them together, he leaves. Harry tries to get the sword of Gryffindor from a pond, but the Horcrux tries to drown him. Ron arrives and saves him. Ron destroys the locket with the sword of Gryffindor. They visit Mr. Lovegood and learn about the Deathly Hallows and the three brothers' relics, the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Cloak of Invisibility. Voldemort gets the Elder Wand, and then the trio are arrested along with Luna, Ollivander, and others. Dobby saves them, but not before he is killed by Bellatrix. So that's my my summary. So okay, so I did try my best to read this book before this podcast, but I got to chapter 21. I didn't quite finish this portion of the book, but I did my best. I tried. So let's start with our overall thoughts on the rewatch, and I'll go first. So when I saw this in the theater, I thought this was really boring. I remember sitting and because all of the previous movies I had really liked in the theater and had found them quite magical, and I went to see this one really primed, really hyped, and I literally remember just checking my watch and just being like, oh, it's so boring. And so I had never watched it again after that. And it wasn't as bad as I remembered. It wasn't as boring as I remembered it, I have to say. But it still feels like something that doesn't need to exist to me. And it feels like, boy, they spend a lot of time at that tent. It's like, this is a fantasy movie. Why are we at this tent so long? Like, for like an hour and a half. It just, like, a soap opera kind of drama to me. But I think before that, some of the stuff at the Ministry and some of the scene at the wedding is pretty cool. So it's better than I remembered it, but it's still got problems. So, what about you, Richard? What do you think about it? on the rewatch?
I think it is. I think it is easily the weakest one. It's I can't really call it like boring as a whole, but it comes closest to being boring. There are certainly some boring parts, like you say, the camping that goes on much too long, and there are other scenes at the ministry that go on too long, and also I feel it's the film that might be the most confusing for people who haven't read the book, because they rush through a lot of stuff and they have to introduce things that the other films left out, like Bill and Mundungus, and they had to bring back Dobby when he was in most of the other books, but now he hasn't appeared in the film since Chamber of Secrets. And I did think there were some good individual bits, like the Tale of the Three Brothers animated sequence, and also the acting that the people who were using Polyjuice Potion do when they had to pretend to be different characters. That was good, but it is quite a weak film overall, I think.
What about you, Abby?
I don't agree with you that it doesn't need to exist necessarily. I do think it should have been at least a half an hour shorter. It was way too long. The first time I saw it, I don't remember hating it. I do remember feeling like, that's a really long movie. And it's not, I mean, in terms of movie lengths, it's not the longest movie ever. It just feels like the longest movie ever.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it has value. I think there's a lot of good in it, but there's a lot of boring and painful in it also.
Yeah. That's never a good response when you finish a movie and you're like, wow, that was really long. It's kind of reminds me of in Sleepless in Seattle when Tom Hanks asks his son, do I look nice? He's like, you look really tall. That's why I thought of that. It's like tall.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
I'll agree with that. I felt like the camping it did feel like it went on forever. But to be fair, I kind of felt that way as I read the book too. I just felt like that dragged in the book as well. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They also the ministry scene. I that could have been much shorter as well. The overall, though, I really enjoyed the cinematography. They had a lot of great special effects, camera work, and it was visually appealing. I'll say emotionally, I was, I don't know, I was emotionally invested in the first few minutes, and just really they reeled me in, and then they lost me for about 2 hours. And then they reeled me back in at the end. And so that was kind of an interesting little roller coaster that they put you on.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it, actually. I think I maybe I agree. Yeah, because the beginning was stronger than I remembered it, for sure. Okay, well, so here's interesting. I've never done a question like this, but so true or false? Turning this book into 2 movies was a good idea. So, start with you, Richard. What do you think?
It is quite a hard one to answer, really, because I feel like this film it's too stretched out, and yet the second film kind of more justifies the decision because that's much better paced and there's a lot more action in it. In a way, it's kind of the book's fault because the book has this quite long first half where not much is happening, and also that because the heroes don't really know where they're going, they don't know how to do the things that they feel they need to, and there is probably some stuff that could have been cut from this besides some of the camping and some of the stuff in the ministry. I mean, if you were really merciless, you might have been able to cut a lot of the stuff in Godric's Hollow, because that's kind of a bit of an aside, really. But I would say true, if only for the how the second film is handled, because the second film does the book more justice, I think.
What do you think, Abby?
I agree that this is a tough question, because could it have been done in 1 movie? Absolutely, but it would have needed to be a long movie, and it would have needed to deviate significantly from the book.
Definitely, yeah.
However, The, I don't know. I kind of do feel like 2 movies is okay. It's doable. I just think it was poorly executed. I don't think they needed to give us all the time in the tent that the books gave us.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think 2 movies could have been okay, but I don't think the way they executed it was very successful.
Yeah. Well, there is actually more time in the tent in the book. I mean, you know how they go straight from Xenophilius Lovegood's house to being caught by the snatchers in the film. Well, in the book, there's like another 2 months of camping in between that.
Oh, that's right. I totally
Well,
forgot
it's
that.
so weird because I mean, the end of the last, you're like, oh, they're gonna be looking for these Horcruxes, and it's gonna be so exciting and everything like that. And then they spend this whole movie just finding one of them and destroying one of them. Like it's I don't know. It's sort of weird that way, I feel.
Yeah. Well, the book kind of emphasizes that they are trying to figure out where the other Horcruxes might be on almost no evidence, but the movie doesn't really give much attention to that.
Yeah.
They just really don't know what to do. They don't have very much to go on.
You know, I think that's part of the problem with the tent scenes is they're just not doing anything. Like
No.
in the books, when they were in the tent, they were doing stuff. They weren't just sitting around in the forest looking sad.
Like it turns into a telenovela at a certain point, I feel like. Like it turns into this soap opera between these 3 people. Like I think in the tents, I think it gets a little Twilighty. I really do. Between the 3 of them. But
I will agree. I think it did need to be 2 movies. I think I would have rather seen half an hour taken off of this and given to the last movie.
Yeah. Tom Blakeney says, the downside to this is that everyone's doing the whole splitting the last one into 2 parts. Which, let's hope that the recent fiasco of Divergent series that'll be not happen anymore. Because I agree, I hate that trend. It's awful.
Because with Twilight and the Hunger Games, I mean, Breaking Dawn and Mockingjay, you could definitely have done those in just one film. There were,
yes.
I mean, this one, like it definitely has there's lots of detail. So maybe you can justify the 2 films again by the second half. But Breaking Dawn and Mockingjay, I don't think you can really justify it except to get more money.
I totally agree. When your final book is this thick, okay, maybe you can justify turning it into 2 movies. When your final book is this thick, you probably are just trying to drag it out.
Yeah. I mean, The Hobbit is the worst. The worst one of those. I mean, turning that into 3. A terrible choice. Terrible. Okay. So let's start. So I don't understand. Even after, I have to admit, even after reading the book, why did Hermione have to brainwipe her parents? Like, were they really gonna? I mean, they've been just nothing at all, not a presence at all in these stories, and I don't see how. Like, if they were gonna come after her or look for her or be in danger in some way, the people that were going to do that danger aren't going to know that she had done that, so they're still in danger. And I just feel like, couldn't she have like put them in like made them fall asleep, or like put them in a coma, or you know what I mean, or like something that wasn't so permanent? That seemed kind of cold to me.
It's kind of based on the fact that Hermione doesn't know she's going to survive. I mean, in the book, how details that she doesn't just wipe their memory; she sends them and she makes them move to Australia. I mean, you can kind of in the film you can kind of hear in the background they're looking at some stuff about Australia, but it's not really very obvious. And her idea is that if she gets killed, then they'll still be able to have this happy life without knowing that they ever had a daughter.
Huh. I guess I read too quickly because I don't remember that, but yeah, I don't know. It just seemed kind of out of nowhere to me, especially because we haven't seen those characters at all.
No, we don't even know. We know hardly anything about them in the books either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, and actually, I agree with that sentiment about a lot of things in this movie. That a lot of things just seem to come out of nowhere,
Yeah.
as Richard mentioned, because of things that were mentioned in books but were omitted from the previous movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. You notice, by the way, that Hermione's mum is Catelyn Stark from Game of Thrones.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know. I know you don't really watch Game of Thrones, Rachel, but I don't know if Jeremy and Abby do.
Yeah, we haven't.
Uh, I know the actress though, so that's interesting.
Yeah, she was in the others as well. She was at the end of the others.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Um. Okay. Uh. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting thing. So let's see. We did get one other comment from Potter. It says, I also hate this new trend. It worked for Harry Potter, in my opinion. It half worked with The Hobbit. It did not work with Twilight, Hunger Games, and Divergent. So there you go. Okay, so next question I have is basically this movie comes down to Voldemort looking for the Elder Wand and Harry and the trio trying to destroy the locket. Is this enough for a movie? Enough plot? And do you agree with that statement?
Well, I'll go first. I'll just say I think it could have been enough. I think on Voldemort's side, we could use more than just the Harry's flashes into what's going on with Voldemort. Because and that's a device that the book used because we're in Harry's head, and so we're seeing it through his eyes. But I think in the movie, why not just go and have some scenes with Voldemort? And so we get to see his thinking and see his, oh, okay, I just feel like they could have really fleshed that out a little more, have more dialogue in those scenes so that you really do get a sense of this is the alternate plot that's happening, rather than just having these little flashes. And I feel like they could have given some more time to that and made it more interesting and build up some of the drama, rather than having so much, on the tent and the ministry. They could have devoted some of it to the other side.
That's
That is a
true.
good point because Voldemort's such a far away villain a lot of the time, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because in Order of the Phoenix, one of the things that works really well, I think, in that is you do start to get into the head of Voldemort more than in any of the other movies, don't you think?
Yeah. And I would have really enjoyed, hearing the full conversation between Voldemort and Ollivander, and just hearing about these wand makers trying to figure out what's going on between the wands. I mean, that's a really cool, story that you get from that. So I really do miss that, seeing more of that side.
Yeah, definitely. Abby, you have any thoughts on that? Plot?
Yeah, I felt kind of the same. Like as we're getting these little flashes of information, I remembered this being important in the book, and not just a 3-second flash. Like, and there were a lot of things that felt like they were important, but they weren't treated as if they were important.
Yeah, it's sort of weird in the way that like it feels really stretched out, but then it also feels somewhat confusing about certain things like Hermione and her parents, or there's just certain characters that it's like, oh, I wish we'd gotten kind of like, I don't know, I wish we'd gotten to see more of them, even though I feel like it's really long. So I think you really nailed it when you said it could have been, because I think yeah, there is that potential, but I don't know. I just don't think it was executed all that well. Because like I would have liked to have seen more of Draco at this point. I would have liked to have seen more of Snape in this movie. That's my general, like, I would say one of my general critiques of the whole series is more Snape, more Snape, more Snape. We need more. And I don't know, just all these different characters that are making choices that are interesting. I don't feel like we really get to spend that much time with, even like really thinking about kind of Dumbledore's choices, which is really a big part of the book. I feel like is Harry coming to terms with Dumbledore's choices, and I feel like that's kind of an afterthought, and it's more just sort of time spent on this, for lack of a better word, dopey young adult love triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the Dumbledore stuff does get cut, and I feel like there's just enough left in for it to be confusing, especially at the wedding.
Yeah, you're right. They left just enough in for it to be.
That's a very good way to put it. I like it.
I mean, what you say about the rushing and stretching, it feels like it rushes what should have a little more time devoted to it, and then it stretches out what should be covered more quickly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Potterhead says, I suppose they could have cut down a few scenes here and there, but Deathly Hallows still wouldn't have worked as one film. It would have felt very rushed. I don't know. It's hard to say. Without having seen it done the right way, then, we can only conjecture, I guess. It's hard to say. Okay. Let's see. Next question. Do you get a good sense of tension that the Order of Phoenix is under when they try to move Harry? What do you think, Abby?
When they try to move him, yeah, I guess so. That does seem to be a scary thing, I guess. Some of them, you get it from some characters more than others, where they're really concerned. But then you have Fred and George in the middle of it making jokes. So it probably could be a more tense scene. And I felt like that whole thing where they moved him was a little rushed. Like, I don't know. I felt like when I read the book, like, oh, this is going to be so awesome in the movie. Because, like, how intense is this scene? And then when I saw it, I was like, uh-oh. That's kind of not as cool as I thought it would be. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
No, I felt it didn't work quite as well in the film as it did in the book, even though a lot of the same elements are used. Like we see the Death Eaters talking about how they're going to get Harry beforehand, which kind of builds up the suspense. But I feel there's some things that aren't quite dwelt upon as much, like the fact that in the book we get this whole chapter beforehand of Harry saying goodbye to the Dursleys and Harry explaining the pressure that they're under and the risk that they're all under, and that kind of adds to the tension there. So I feel the book kind of does it better. It doesn't feel quite the same way as in the film. The action scenes, it's not that bad, but it's not great either.
It's a little disappointing. Just a little like, that wasn't all that I hoped and dreamed it would be.
That's true. I think that Dursley scene really does make a big difference in the book. They have a little bit of it here, but the fact that he's so like insistent, leave, get out of here, go to somebody that he doesn't really even like, I think says a lot, and so yeah, I think that I thought it was an enjoyable scene. I liked it pretty good, but yeah, I agree it is more tense in the book for sure.
I remember watching it in the cinema when Harry lets Hedwig go after he leaves the house, and I was thinking, well, maybe Hedwig's going to live in the film, but no such luck there.
Oh, poor Hedwig.
Yeah.
Well, and
okay.
That was an emotional. I don't know. I felt more emotion in the book. I just felt like I don't know. The whole scene felt very rushed. When they're in the air, you have Hedwig dying. You have Voldemort takes the shot at Harry, and that seems to take all of 5 seconds for the whole thing to go through. You think they would kind of slow down, maybe let you know, hey, Voldemort's coming, give you something from his perspective, or just something to show he's coming, rather than poof, he's there and there's a shot and then it's over. It just felt very.
Yeah, and I remember in the book too feeling like every time someone got hit, like that was an emotional blow. That was like, we're like feeling this horribleness with Harry. And in the movie, you don't get that at all. You don't feel with them at all. It's just Oh, this
No,
isn't
there
a
is,
good action shot.
no, there is a real sense of danger, isn't there?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I
I
remember in
felt
the
a
book.
little bit. Sorry.
So
Sorry.
in the
Go
book,
ahead.
wasn't there a question of whether or not Hagrid survived at first?
Hmm.
Because at least my recollection was, Harry somehow landed, and there was a question like Hagrid. We weren't sure if Hagrid survived, and then he appeared and was okay.
Or he was injured or something.
Yeah, it might also have an effect as well that throughout the films, there's a bit of inconsistency about what each spell does. I mean, most spells, like in combat, they're just like a jet of light and somebody is knocked over or sent flying. Whereas in the book, it's more specific. There's a spell that knocks you out. There's a spell that paralyzes you. And other spells that do other things. They tie you up in ropes or something. But you don't quite get that in the films.
Right.
So in a spell, it's going to hit somebody. You think it's just going to knock them over.
Yeah.
That's
That's a good point. I didn't think it was a total miss. I thought it was kind of fun. I guess because I went into this with extremely low expectations, because I didn't like it so much the first time that I thought it was kind of fun. So okay. Next question. Does anything in the wedding scene work for you? What about you, Jeremy?
I really like Luna. She was great in there. Just the small interaction she had introducing her dad to. I mean, that was an important thing for the movie. I don't know. It was nice to see all the characters back. It was odd to have Bill Weasley introducing himself to Harry. Like, hi, I'm Bill Weasley, and I'm like, oh, you've known each other for years. Things like that. But I don't really have any strong thoughts or feelings about the wedding scene.
Yeah.
No, it was I don't not that much to say about it, but I mean, it looked pretty good. And like I said before, it had this some talk about Dumbledore's backstory with his family, which never really comes up again, about his father killing some Muggles. There's no explanation for that, and we don't really know anything about Bill and Fleur's relationship either, because we haven't seen Fleur since Goblet of Fire, and we haven't seen Bill at all. In fact, when that scene where Harry's trying to leave the burrow and Ron stops him, and Ron says you should stay for the wedding, that's the first mention that Bill and Fleur are even engaged.
That's true. I noticed that too, and I was like, "What wedding?" As a movie watcher, I don't know that there is one. Like, who's getting married?
Yeah, you see what I mean.
So
if you haven't read the books, you're going to be lost in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it looked kind of cool. I thought it was sort of visually interesting. Yeah,
I agree with that.
So
Yeah,
I liked Jeremy didn't like the raise. I like the raising of the tent, but he's like, "Why does it take so many wizards to raise one tent?"
yeah, I don't know. The magic is a little fuzzy sometimes in Harry Potter.
And I also noticed Molly Weasley was standing at the sink doing dishes. I was like, doesn't she have a spell for that? Like, why is she doing dishes?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be standing doing dishes ever if I had magic.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Yeah, this should be like in a Sleeping Beauty or something. Like
Exactly. Or the Sword in the Stone. It was in the Sword in the Stone as well, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. Sword in the Stone. That's right. Higgidus Figgidus. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was kind of fun. Yeah. But yeah. I mean, it really comes out of nowhere, and I don't know. It doesn't feel like something that, I don't know. It feels in a way. A lot of this movie, in a way, sort of feels like, here you go, fans. You wanted to see this. Here you go. Look at this. It's so pretty.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess. I mean,
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, I guess, if it made fans happy, then I guess it did its job. But I don't know if it really did.
One thing I liked about the wedding scene that you mentioned Ron and Hermione dance, and it's nice to get a nice moment, don't they? Yeah, it's nice to get a nice moment with them because in the books, Ron and Hermione are close friends, but there's sort of this tension between them also not wanting to admit that they're in love with each other. But in the movies, it comes off as they friggin' hate each other. Like, all they do is argue in the movies, and they're mean to each other constantly. And especially Ron. He's just a total jerk in the movie. And it's nice to, but in the books, there is some of that, but it's balanced by their friendship and their positive moments.
Is that undermined? Oh, sorry. But is that undermined by the long dance that we get between Harry and Hermione later on?
Probably. That was super weird and uncalled for.
I heard somewhere that the screenwriter is a Harry Hermione shipper.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if it's true, but I heard it somewhere.
That's stupid.
It might explain a bit.
While we're on this, I really didn't appreciate the when the locket is opened and they see Harry and Hermione essentially naked there.
Yeah.
I did not need that.
We'll talk more about that in a second, but yeah, I agree. It is very weird. Okay. There's some fun moments in there in the wedding scene, I think, but yeah. Okay, so my next question is, not a lot of action and a lot of time spent at those tents with the melodrama, so we can get, and yeah, I mean, I just don't understand what they were thinking. Like, did teenagers really want to spend all this time with them in this tent? Like, I don't know, it's just weird. Like, it's supposed to be a fantasy. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, I don't know, like, it just, I don't know. What do you think, Richard, about all this melodrama in these tents?
It is a little bit weird. You do at least get an impression in the book that Harry, Ron, and Hermione have basically been thrust into the adult world and having to fend for themselves without any support. And they don't really summarize what happens in the tents a little bit. But I definitely don't like how it gets dragged out in this film. As for the melodrama, it is at least motivated by the fact that they are so frustrated and they don't know what they're doing, and Ron at least was expecting that Harry would have more of a plan, and also the fact that the effect that the Locket Horcrux is having on them. So it's not the best, but it is how they feel is understandable to some degree.
Yeah. What do you think, Abby, about all this melodrama in the tents or tent? Did it work for you at all?
I guess it's age appropriate.
Yeah.
You 17-year-olds are melodramatic. They have relationship problems that they think are the end of the world.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Boring. Like,
yeah.
The thing is, okay, so the soundtrack really does not help this movie either.
Yeah.
Like, the soundtrack really bothered me. If I never hear just loud enough to be audible, low, dissonant, stringed music ever again, I will be happy. Because that is all that's in this movie. Even in some of the action parts, even when stuff is happening, they're playing this, like, very low, dissonant music that's, like, supposed to be building you up to it. There's no release from it. Like, and that's, I mean,
there's no whimsy. Even in 7 Part 2, there's some whimsy left. Like, there's some, and I think that's a problem that you have in, like, adapting some of these young adult novels is I don't know, they're just so, like, they're not fun enough. They're not, not that everything has to be silly, but I don't know, they should have a little bit of sort of whimsy to them, if that makes sense.
I agree.
A little too self-serious.
So the music is sort of similar in tone to, like, the Jaws theme when it first starts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in the Jaws theme, there's sort of this buildup of tension until you hit release, because you're actually building something. There's actual action.
Well, and that's a horror movie. I mean, it's not a fantasy.
Right. But in this movie, there's no release of the tension. It's like they're trying to give us this tension through this low music and this brooding in these tents, but it doesn't add up. Mm-hmm. Like, there is no tension. The tension isn't building. It's just broody teenager, I don't know, depression. That's like most of this movie.
Yeah. So we have some comments from Potterhead. She says, I love the Harry and Hermione dance scene, and also Ron and Hermione dance in the book. They don't dance in the film. So, yeah, there you go.
They danced in the film. I could have sworn I saw them dancing.
Yeah, I don't remember. But, yeah, I don't know. It did feel to me like, why are they trying to create this love triangle? Because I didn't feel that way in the book. I mean, there's definitely the sense that Ron is jealous and frustrated, and the Horcrux is influencing him, but not in the same way. The way, with the dance and with the other stuff that, and so I don't know. The way they handle it here is definitely more, we're trying to be a young adult romance thing.
No, there's no explicit statement that Harry and Hermione are platonic, are there? Like there is in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, in the book, Harry says to Ron, "She's like my sister."
Right. Yeah.
So
definitely.
I think in general, deviate from the book a ton. I mean, really, as movies go, some of them deviated a lot more than this. And the ways that it does deviate from the book are not, like, helpful at all.
No.
I don't feel like they really add anything to it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay, well, Jeremy brought it up. Let's talk about this vision that Ron has with Harry and Hermione naked, basically. What on earth? I remember when that came out, I was like, there's an ad on TV where it's like, it's for crackers or something, and they're like, it can be your defense against when you forget about a scene when you're watching it with your kids, and she like moves the cracker box, in front of her kid, and I felt kind of like that. I remember feeling though at the time, like with my sister being like,
don't look. Yeah.
What on earth? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm a prude or something, but that was a little much. Don't you think, Richard?
Yeah. Well, it's not like it's especially explicit. You don't see anything.
No.
Oh, it's a lot of skin, though.
There's kind of this ethereal.
Not part of this.
There is kind of almost like an ethereal kind of Barbie doll quality to it.
Mm-hmm. But the thing that bothers me is in all of the Harry Potter series in the books, there is no sex, no nudity.
Oh, no.
Nothing like that. At least no sexual nudity. There might have been some Snape with his underpants or something when he was when Harry was seeing his past. But
No,
I felt like that had no place in this series, and they had no business putting it in where it wasn't.
That is a good point. I mean, the closest to coming in the books is something like in the scene where all the other people are taking polyjuice potions to look like Harry, and he's saying that they're much more comfortable showing off his body than they would be their own as they get undressed.
Yeah,
that's the closest they come in the books, really. But that is a good point there, I suppose.
Yeah. What particularly, I guess, did you find you don't like about it, Jeremy?
I don't know. Well, maybe I'll start with a question of my own, and that is, what happened in the book? I just can't remember what happened in the book when they were destroying the locket. I thought they're hearing a voice, but I didn't remember a vision.
Yeah, it's kind of more like a couple of kind of bubbles come out of the Horcrux, and they kind of turn into the heads of Harry and Hermione, talking to Ron, and then they kind of twist around each other and start kissing each other. There's no like mention of their actual bodies and being nude or anything like that, and it's not quite the same as it is in the film. In the film, you got this like big explosion of this thing that looks like black slime and these spiders on the ground. There's none of that in the book. It's really just this Voldemort voice and Harry and Hermione's heads appearing.
Yeah, I guess the largeness that's kind of what was striking to me was just how big this thing was that came out of the locket. Like, how do you even see the locket to thrust the sword at it? Because there's all this going on around it.
It would have been interesting if Ron had gone charging forward with the sword, smashes it down, and he ended up missing, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's necessary for them to be naked. I mean, does it?
No, it's not necessary, no.
Yeah, because I think that Ron would have been just as upset if it had been them clothed and kissing.
Yeah.
Uh,
It just felt. I think the problem with it is it feels really contrived. Like, sex sells, and we're trying really hard to get the teenagers who are hoping for some titillation.
But no, you don't. But you're right. You don't need that in a Harry Potter film.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't really bother me watching it because it wasn't especially explicit. I felt, but I feel kind of right with the point you raised.
Yeah.
We did get a comment real quick. He says, from KCTO, he says, I like this movie a lot, and I asked him why, and he says, he says, well, the effects are really nice, and the overall story is pretty smart. So, some people, I guess it's their thing. I don't know. It feels like a lot of the choices they made in this movie were kind of trying to sort of rope in the Twilight crowd. And people that love Harry Potter might be offended by that, but I do think that they were trying to kind of get some of that sort of love triangle, young adult. Like, this is the first movie that really felt like a young adult movie as opposed to a fantasy film. To me.
I agree with that.
I suppose there was a little bit of young adult in Half-Blood Prince as well, with all the romance that was going on.
Yeah. That's true, but that's more sort of comic relief, I feel like.
Yeah.
This is more. There's even a scene, and I forget which Twilight book it's in, that they're in a tent, Jacob and Edward, and I was like, "What's it with these young adult, young adult scenes in tents?" I don't know, but
it's not a magic tent, is it? They have to sleep right next to each other.
Yeah, and it's very dramatic. Yeah.
I think there's an innocence to the romance in it up to this point also.
Yeah.
I think that's what bothers me about the nudity is it takes away the innocence of the romance between these teenage children.
Right.
I just remember there's another bit in the book where it's Harry's 17th birthday and Ron gives him this book called having 12 fail-safe ways to charm witches. And he says something like, you'd be surprised, it's not all about wand work.
Okay, let's keep going here. Yeah, it just felt off-putting. It really did. So, okay, so we already kind of talked about that. So let's see, my next question. What do you think of Mr. Lovegood and his story of the brothers? What about you, Jeremy?
I really liked the scene. I liked the animated short that they did. I really enjoyed the explanation, and I like that just like in the book, you see this is part of the Tales of Beedle the Bard that Dumbledore left for Hermione, and so there have been clues like this is what Dumbledore wants you to find, and I really like that you almost get some vindication for the Lovegood family. They're kind of well, in the wizarding world they're seen as a little wacko, a little weird, that they believe in things that nobody else really does, but then you find out like this story that seems to be at the core of some of their beliefs, because the dad wears the amulet and things, and you're thinking like, this is actually something that turns out to be absolutely real, as we go farther in, and it's really neat to just kind of have them be validated for kind of knowing something that's perceived by everybody else to be legend or just this children's story.
Yeah, I really do love the Tale of the Three Brothers sequence as well. In fact, I think it's one of the best parts of the whole series. Just the whole shadow puppet style, and it really isn't like anything else we've seen in the films. But I don't think the Hallows are really adequately explained. I mean, there's quite a brief coverage by Mr. Lovegood, and then later on, and Harry saying that Voldemort knows about the Hallows, but he's only interested in the Elder Wand. Whereas in the book, there's actually some more extended conversations about whether these Hallows are real or not. And I don't think in the films it's ever actually brought up that Harry's invisibility cloak might be a Hallow. They never bring it up at all. It's mostly about the Elder Wand and some little mentions of the Resurrection Stone. And so when the Deathly Hallows are in the title, you think there'd be more to it.
Is it confusing to have these Hallows and the Horcruxes? I mean, do we get too far off track, sort of looking for these Horcruxes and destroying them?
But aren't they clues to the Horcruxes? Aren't these Hallows potential Horcruxes or something?
The Elder Wand is, right?
Yeah. Well, the Elder Wand isn't a Horcrux. Voldemort just wants it so he can use it to kill Harry. But he did have the Resurrection Stone in the form of a ring without knowing what it was, and he turned that into a Horcrux, which Dumbledore destroyed at just before the Half-Blood Prince started. Really, the Elder Wand is the only one that Voldemort's interested in. I think in the book there's a bit of deviation because of Mr. Lovegood telling Harry that possessing the Hallows would make you Master of Death, and so Harry considers maybe he could go after these Hallows and he'll be able to defeat Voldemort in that way somehow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Another deviation, because again they don't really know where else to proceed with the Horcruxes until they get to Malfoy Manor and they get this clue that there's a Horcrux in Bellatrix Lestrange's vault.
Because I'm not really a detail-oriented reader, I have to say. I tend to miss. I'm like, oh, they're doing this, and I get more into sort of the dialogue and what's happening as opposed to like details like with the Horcruxes or things like that. It kind of get lost on me a little bit. But I really enjoyed the Tale of the Three Brothers. Of course, I love animation, so that would be a win for me. And it is a little bit whimsical. It's kind of bringing a little bit of kind of fun and mystery and stuff kind of away from the melodrama, which I like.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing that makes me sad about the whole, what's his name, Luna's father, is in the books we get a lot more of a sense of their, as a family, of their courage, of their like devotion to what's right and telling the truth and saying what they believe and not deviating from that. When he betrays them, it's much more of a sign of like, oh my goodness, like this is how far this has gone.
Yeah.
But they're torturing this poor guy by taking his daughter, and they've pushed him to the point of betraying people he cares about and believes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's more of a sense of like, oh, this is really bad. Than in the movie where you're just kind of like, oh, what a jerk. He totally betrayed them.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And mind you, I mean, in the books, that he's the one source that really believes Harry when the whole world turned against him in Order of the Phoenix. You have the Quibbler is publishing the truth that Harry shares, and that's really. So he was the voice who believed Harry and was willing to publish him when nobody else would.
Yeah, that's very true. That's true. Okay, so my next question is, does Dobby's sacrifice work for you? Does it move you? Does it what about you, Jeremy?
I did feel it more in the book. Just to be honest, I don't know if there's a way they could have done it better in the movie. I feel like the idea of Dobby sacrificing himself, I really like it. Harry basically did for Dobby what no other house elf has really had, and that's just being freed from this really oppressive house. And Dobby's been able to have just a life that he chooses now, and that, what's that worth to you? But then it creates this incredible devotion to Harry, and I absolutely believe it was something that Dobby would do. I didn't feel like we went beyond his character. He would have been more than happy to lay down his life for Harry, so I think it was just spot on in the book, and this one I didn't feel as much emotion as I did in the reading and maybe on the first watch, but maybe it's just I've seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah. I feel they made it as sad as it could be in the film, but the problem with that is we don't really know Dobby in the films because he's been in all the books beforehand, up to from Goblet of Fire onwards, working at Hogwarts and having this relationship with Harry and giving Harry a lot of help. So we know Dobby a lot better in the book, and so it really is quite heart-wrenching when he does end up sacrificing his own life for Harry. But in the film, we don't really have that. I mean, they have to like introduce him earlier on when Creature's capturing Mundungus Fletcher, so he's not just appearing out of absolutely nowhere when they're in the cellar at Malfoy Manor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Creature is a much bigger part in the book.
Yeah. No, they actually would have cut Creature from Order of the Phoenix if J.K. Rowling had actually told them you have to leave him in because he's going to be very important later on.
Yeah, I thought they missed something there with Creature. I want to say in the book you found out that he went with Regulus to get the locket and was the one who had to drink the potion in the cave, and that was primarily what led to him being, maybe he was cantankerous before, but that's, it really did.
Now he's a psycho.
Yeah. But you really developed some compassion for a Creature because you found out what he'd really been through. So I felt like they did miss something there that they could have shared.
I can't believe how much detail you remember from the books, Jeremy. Knowing how long it's been since you read them, I'm amazed.
It has been. I think I only read 7 once.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And that was years ago when it came out.
They all sort of meshed together for me. Even though I just read it I read a good hunk of it this week. It's still, I'm just, like I said, I'm not a detailed reader like that. Those small details I just don't remember. But we did have some good comments. So from Potter, she says, I also love the Three Brothers animated scene. And she says, I'm a detail-oriented reader, so these books and how they are written by J.K. Rowling is right up my alley. My cup of tea, if you will. So there you go. So, okay. I actually thought the Dobby scene worked. I think it would have worked better if we had spent more time with him and gotten to know him better, but I liked it. I thought it was good. And Potter says, I think Dobby's death is handled very well in this film. I bawled in the theater, as did many people around me in my packed cinema. Very emotional. So there you go.
Yeah, I cried in the theater, but this time when I watched it, I didn't really feel it. But I'm also much farther removed from having read the books and actually caring about Dobby. So.
And I was, just to be honest, I had more emotional reaction to the opening scene, where Hedwig dies and Moody. That whole scene had me much more emotional than Dobby's death at the end on the rewatch.
Yeah. I can hardly comment because I don't really cry at films.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, I didn't know this about you, Richard.
No, I think the only times I've actually cried at films are like when I was a child. But You know, there have been some like almosts in adulthood, but never actually
Oh.
going all the way. Like Heart of Stone, really.
do you
Jeremy's
watch
bigger movie player than I am.
Bambi's mother gets shot and you're having a great day, huh?
See, pretty much, yeah.
I'm an easy cry. I admit it. I'm an easy cry. You can get me pretty quick. Okay. Yeah, so next is, does this film work in the sense that it makes you excited for the next one? Like, it's sort of like a primer for part 2.
Yeah, really. It's what happens in the second part because you've read the book. I feel it ends on quite a good bit. Where I feel like the confrontation at Malfoy Manor, which sort of serves as the climax, which is a bit difficult because you're splitting it into two, so you don't really have the same 3-act structure. But having that serve as a climax, and then this cliffhanger of Voldemort claiming the Elder Wand, and you think, how's Harry going to beat him now? Now, that was the best place to end this, I think. But I can't really judge how somebody who hadn't read the book would be excited for the next one.
Yeah, I think that yeah, it'd be interesting to know what someone thought if they had never read any of the books.
Yeah, they did build to so they got to a decent stopping point. I mean, if you're gonna pick one, I agree, it's a pretty good place to stop. And you had Voldemort find the Elder Wand, and so you would then assume he's got the power, he's got everything he needs then to kill Harry. And Harry and his friends have just narrowly escaped the Malfoys and the other Death Eaters, and lost Dobby. So emotionally, I think you can feel like this is a good stopping point and a great setup where you are excited to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I felt like I could have turned on the next one. Like, I felt kind of ready to find out what's going to happen and get the ending, get some closure, I guess, on it.
I'm torn on this one because, I look forward and want closure. But on the other hand, at the end, I'm kind of like, I'm done being bored now. Let's not.
I'm done. Let's move on to some other kind of boredom.
Yes.
Maybe that's why the last film did so well at the box office. I mean, it's just like the 8th highest grossing film of all time, just because it provided closure.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me that it did that well. Because I, at least for me, I just remember going to the theater and just being like, didn't like it at all. Didn't like it at all.
No, I'll tell you about the second film, really. I'm not sure how well this one did, but the second one was like the best at the box office. I was just saying, do you think it provided closure?
Yeah.
This one, yeah.
Yeah. I'd liked it better this time around, but that's not saying much because I really didn't like it the first time I saw it.
That's funny. I think I liked it better the first time I saw it.
Yeah. It's that.
But this time I was kind of like, I didn't need that.
Yeah. It does feel kind of inconsequential. Like you could just have it had, I don't know, like had it, like I said, basically this movie comes down to Voldemort looking for the Elder Wand and destroying the locket. And Ron, Harry, and Hermione destroying the locket. That's basically what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There is also the fact that Voldemort has basically taken over the Wizarding Society at this point. There's not quite so much emphasis on that.
True. That's a good point. Okay, my last question is just, does anything else in production design, music, special effects stand out to you? We talked a little about the music, that it really didn't do a whole lot for I think for most of us. I don't know. What about you, Jeremy? Anything stand out for you?
Well, I actually, this might take us a little off the question, but I really enjoyed the scene at the Ministry, and I felt like it could have been shorter, but something I really appreciated was the acting of the three actors who were pretending to be Harry, Ron, and Hermione, pretending to be Ministry officials, and they looked clunky walking around in these larger adult bodies. And they just did such a great job of looking out of place. Talking to Abby about it at the time, we were like, they just did such a great job that you didn't think about it being the actor. You thought about it as Ron or Harry or Hermione pretending to be the actor. And so just really thought that was great. The Ministry was really done well visually. I liked a lot of the effects, and you even had some of the whimsy there where they used the little Weasley's like little fart bombs or whatever they had up outside of Umbridge's office. Just really, I don't know. I thought the Ministry was all really well done.
Yeah, that's a good point. What is it that they say to Umbridge? I thought was a good line, where it's like about not telling lies.
Yeah, you must
not tell lies. That was sweet.
That was
good. Actually, you're right, Jeremy. That was one of the best scenes in the whole movie, I think, is that whole Ministry thing.
Yeah, it was too long, but I did like it.
Yeah, I felt you didn't really need to see Harry in Umbridge's office. There wasn't really a point to that.
Yeah, there were some bits of it that didn't need to be there, but overall, that was a really fun scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, when they first got on the elevator and they hear, I forget whose wife it was that was down there, but they could have just gone straight down there at that time, said, okay, let's go see what's going on with your wife, and then they see Umbridge with the locket and cut it short that way.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love Ron kissing that guy's wife at the end.
Yeah. Forgot about that.
That seems to have a lot of good stuff in it.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, other thoughts on the Ministry, or I don't know.
Yeah, that was a pretty good scene. I did like it, that, and like I said, that dig at Umbridge was really good.
Yeah, I did also like the use of Polyjuice Potion earlier to when they're leaving Privet Drive, how Daniel Radcliffe just had to do like 7 different characters.
Yeah.
And have it all interspersed as well. It's pretty seamless, I think. It looks pretty good, and he gets the gestures right as well.
Yeah.
It was funny too. Yeah.
Yeah, and
we did have peeks at that whimsy, but then we get to the tent, and it's like all of that melts away and disappears, and it's just this brooding teenage angst.
Yeah.
Yeah. At that point, there's not really anything to the production design that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it with just in the woods. It is quite bland, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice tent, but really there's not a whole lot there. Yeah, I agree. I guess I think that the scene where they're underwater is kind of where he's diving for the sword. Like, that looked kind of cool.
Yeah.
But, it's like...
Yeah, that was a good scene, and I like how when he comes out of the water, he doesn't have his glasses on and he can't see anything, and he's like, who did this? Mm-hmm. That was handled well.
Yeah.
So I did have a comment on one of the casting. One of the cast members I really didn't care for was Scrimgeour. I just, as Minister of Magic, the description in the book, I want to say, was reminded me of like Richard Lionheart. I think he was supposed to look like a lion, and I'm picturing something like Theoden from Lord of the Rings. This. I don't know. I just felt like the guy that they cast for it just really didn't fit at all with what my perception.
Yeah, reading the book, he felt a little bit like Sean Connery to me. Yeah,
I got a Sean Connery vibe out of the book too.
That's true. That's a good point. Bill Nighy is Scrimgeour, and
this little wiry dude. And you're like, huh?
Yeah, I think of him as he's in Love Actually. He plays a rock star, aging rock star. Let's think of that. So we did a couple more comments. Potter says, I also liked this film better when I saw it the first time, And she says, I think the visual effects, production design, acting, and score are strong in this film. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah, I mean, nothing really. I think all of those things, we did stand out to me as well. And she says also, Bill Nighy is great, love him. So this is very, very positive about it. I would have. I don't remember him that well in the book, but yeah, somebody like Daniel Craig or somebody like that. Somebody like a sort of
Somebody manly.
Yes, yeah.
Someone big and tough and grizzled, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all my questions. I don't know. Did anyone else have anything you want to talk about?
Not really.
With this one?
Well, I guess I'll just point out the name's escaping me at the moment, but the actor who plays Draco, I think he's continuing to really maximize when he has moments on screen. Like at the opening scene, I think around the Death Eater's table, you have the Hogwarts professor who's being tortured and then killed, and Draco just has this. He is struggling to contain his emotions, and every time I see him, it's an amazing job.
Yeah, I think he is the strongest of the kids. If you look at the whole series as a whole, I think his acting, even at the beginning, is better. I think throughout, he's one of the strongest, at least.
I agree with that.
Definitely.
I think that Emma Watson's probably become a better actress since Harry Potter. But I think he's good. Good actor, Tom Felton. I think he's very good.
He's got the most conflict, I think, in himself. As a character, we like to think from the first few films that he's just evil, and that's kind of Harry, because we see it from Harry's point of view that of course Draco's evil. He's a Slytherin, and he's just evil. But then the more you get in, you realize that he's getting dragged into this world. And he doesn't want that. He doesn't, and he's struggling with that because he is good. And so it's really interesting. I just love the character, and I love the portrayal.
I wonder if part of it is to do with, I think the three main characters, to some degree with kids, you're always going to typecast. But you can't typecast a little jerk. I mean, you can, but you're not going to find a lot of people auditioning that you can tell are just genuinely little jerks.
Let's hope. Yeah.
So I think part of it is to play Malfoy. There was a lot more acting involved than in Emma Watson playing Hermione, for example. Yeah. I mean, Emma Watson's smart and bold and witty. Yeah. She has a lot in common with Hermione, so it's not a huge stretch for her to play that role.
That's a good
with
point.
With Draco, though, I mean, that's going to take a lot of acting from almost anyone. Yeah,
that's a really, really good point. It is true, and it's perhaps easier to kind of be the hero, as opposed to being the villain. And maybe you have more fun with the villain, but
I think it stretches an actor more, stretches their skills. It makes them really have to fight for their craft.
It's just like when I read the book, I felt like such a strong feeling that J.K. Rowling had allowed Harry to remain innocent throughout the thing, as opposed to, like, he never gives in to I know it's the wrong different franchise, but he never gives in to the dark side, and he has cranky moments and everything like that, but I don't know, I really appreciate that, and I also really appreciate the way that she managed to create characters that were very flawed, and you have characters have to go through forgiving other characters, and I feel like some of that is sort of lost in these movies, this sort of character arc on Dumbledore, the character arc on Snape, it's I don't know.
And to some degree, that might just be the nature of the thing. I mean, it's a movie. We can't get all the character development and character arc that we're going to get out of a book. Yeah. It's just, there's not time for it.
No, you have to cut some things and you can't see into the characters' heads in the same way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's true. It's probably true. Okay, I don't know, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like other franchises manage to sort of carry those nuances a little bit better than Harry Potter has done.
That's a fair criticism.
Yeah, I think so.
So, okay, well, so this was fun to talk about. We did one last comment. Potter, she says she agrees that Tom Felton is great as Draco, and I really like the Voldemort and Death Eater meeting at Malfoy Manor at the start of the film. So, yeah, there you go. So, okay, well, we are going to talk about the last of the Harry Potter movies on, when is it? And then we had decided we'll be talking about that in November. And then we will see Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And that comes out November 18th. And so we will see what's going on. And, that is Thanksgiving for us in the U.S. the next week. So we will try to talk about it sometime. We'll talk about Deathly Hallows on November 5th. And then we will do Fantastic Beasts sometime. It might be the first weekend of December, maybe, that we'll do that, is my guess.
Now, I think it's like in the next week or so, at least in the U.S. I'm not sure if they're doing it in the U.K. They're gonna play all 8 Harry Potter films in the theater.
And the IMAX, too.
Oh, yeah, the IMAX. That's right. So we could, in between then, we could watch this next one in the theater for those of us who want to.
Yeah. No, I won't be able to.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Yeah, that's too bad. I'm debating about, I don't think I'll go to all of them, but I might go to 5 and 3, 5, and 7 part 2. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremy and I were just saying, oh man, I wish we hadn't watched so many of them already. We would see more of them. We'll probably just see 7 part 2.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, cool. Well, thanks, you guys. So where can people find you? If you start with Abby.
Abby_kid on Twitter and Instagram, and our blog is jeremyandabbyadopt.wordpress.com.
Awesome. And what about you, Richard?
I'm on Twitter as PNE Richard, and I have a blog which is velociraptor256.wordpress.com.
And his blog is awesome. He divides up the chapters of the book and gives detailed analysis of the chapters.
Well, thank you.
And then you can find me on Twitter at Jeremy_kid.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.